Bordertown. I hope your 2019 is already off to a great start. I am currently recording this in 2018. It's not even Christmas. I am super far in advance, which is awesome. I am doing a bit of pre-recording because I'll be away over New Year's. If my calculations are correct, I should be currently right now, while you're listening to this, I should be in Tasmania driving somewhere. So maybe I'm doing that, maybe I'm not. But I'm pretty sure that's what's going to be happening. But you guys are watching this, so let's talk about what I'm doing on screen. Today's episode, I'm going to be continuing this concrete sunken highway. It's ugly looking, but that is exactly what I wanted. And I actually do a pretty good job in this time lapse at basically recording everything that I do to create this hideous concrete slab of a highway. And I'll talk you through a couple of the techniques too, but you might be interested in creating something quite similar. It took me a while to figure out exactly what I was going to do and how I was going to do it, but I think it turned out just fine. So the bulk of what this concrete slab is pretty much just a painted down concrete texture that I end up using a couple of extra bits and pieces to make it look like it's a concrete slab rather than just a painted ground. So one thing that really helps is this retaining wall that I'm using that creates a nice even flatness up above, which, you know, if it was going to be like a painted ground, or if it was going to be like the ground contours, then it would be very wonky looking, and you can already tell it's still a bit wonky looking. It's not perfectly even, but I do a bit of terraforming to make sure that it is as perfect flat as I possibly can get, because concrete generally comes in sheets that are very even and rectangular, and I wanted to try and keep it that way. So the terraforming that I do is I try to keep it very precise. I try to keep the contours pretty much at the exact same level all the way across the whole retaining wall, pretty much in between both of the bridges. And what I'm also doing is I'm pretty much just creating, doing all the detail work on this one right now, and then I'm going to copy this using Move It to other locations around the highway and basically just make the adjustments to fit that particular environment. And up above, you saw me use some ploppable pavement, which creates a nice flat surface for the road to meet it. I'm using a combination of the expansion joints to create the look of the individual slabs of concrete. And then now you can see me just pasting it pretty much wherever it fits. And then I can just use Move It as well to basically make the adjustments, because it tends to be a different size everywhere I place it down. And luckily there's like a whole bunch of really cool filters that I can use to select multiple areas and then drag it to the right spot. It's definitely not an easy task, and it took a while. It probably doesn't look like it's taken that long, but it took bloody ages. But something that really helps the process is this whole copying and pasting part. Something that I do also do with this is I try to copy just the bulk of the base of it, so pretty much just the base of it without any of the detail work, and then once I have copied that over, I can then detail it however I'd like to, and that way it kind of makes it a little bit more individual, whereas if I just copied exactly how it looked on every single different layer, then it would look exactly the same everywhere. And I think something that really captures the realism, I guess, of this whole of creating these concrete slabs is the curb network that you can see. That it's pretty much the network that separates the concrete slabs to the highway. That does wonders. I think that it creates this little lip that makes it look like there is that these are actual concrete slabs rather than just painted ground. But that is essentially it. I mean, it took a lot of getting used to, and quite a lot of the time I thought that it just wasn't going to work, and eventually it just kind of all came together and I was pleasantly surprised. That was pretty much the entire build, as me just going, this is not working, and then bam, yay, it works. That's how it felt pretty much the entire time. And the shops surrounding the highway actually play a pretty big part in this whole area. Not only do they look awesome, which I'll also talk about just in a second, they're other functionality, but they also create a very abrupt change to the ground level, which is something that I also really needed, because for some reason when you use the brush to terraform the area, it works, but it's way more gradual than if you were to place like a building or a road. They make a sudden change to the ground level, and that's also something that you need. You actually see me working on this area here, and something that was just happening naturally that I couldn't really control was basically just a very sheer wall, and that was fine. You know, it made for a little bit of difference, which is what also something that I wanted. I wanted there to be not the same look on every single wall, but a very similar look at least. So I was taking quite a lot of ideas from the El Paso highway around here. I just call it the El Paso highway, but it probably isn't. But, you know, what I've noticed is that there's a lot of different types of walls that pretty much divide the highway to pretty much everything else. And that's what I wanted. I wanted there to be quite a lot of different types of walls that's divided, and, you know, couple of interesting areas as well. But going back to the shops, so I also wanted the shops around this area to pretty much represent the types of shops that you would find around the exits and the entrances to highways. So the types of places that I was looking for, the types of shops I was after fast food joints, I was after crumbling old school commercial buildings that have probably been there for a really long time and are probably abandoned or in the process of being redeveloped. So you see me place them down at the very end of the episode. They're kind of a bit more old school looking, whereas these fast food joints are much more flashier. They're brand new, and they're sort of the ones that are popping up around this area at least. This is all completely fictional, not basing this off anything. And I've also placed down a couple of motels because they're also something that you'd find around these sort of areas. And something that I spoke about in the last episode of Bordertown is that Las Palmas, which is the fictional city that I'm building, is very run down. It's got a high crime rate. There's a bit of abandonment. There is like a lot of the places, including this highway, are run down and they need upgrading. And although some places are upgrading and are changing, other areas are not. This area in particular is not. So, you know, being so close to the highway kind of can go two ways. And this is what I've always noticed, and something that always fascinates me, that around places that get a lot of traffic, a lot of attention, can either be a place where just there is nothing going on. So there's either just so much traffic involved that there's not really any pedestrians, there's not really any shops thriving around here. It's purely just a transit area, which is what I'm sort of basing this area as. Whereas some places that do receive a lot of traffic also receive a lot of foot traffic, and generally the government puts a lot of money into those areas to kind of continue that and you know, keep that basically the front of the city, because this whole area is pretty much one of the first places that you see when you come into Las Palmas. If you're going to take this highway, at least there are a couple of other entrances to the city. So this area in particular, I just wanted to pretty much keep it as purely transit. You know, if you're going to stop here, you're stopping at a motel because it's midnight and you need just a place to crash, or you're coming off the ramp and you're going to a fast food joint and then you're going straight back onto the ramp, or this is purely a place that you just drive through, you don't really stop around. And even though it is one of the places that you see pretty much first in Las Palmas, it's just like that. And maybe eventually at some point in, you know, the history of the city, it will be changed and will be redeveloped, maybe when they actually redevelop the highway, but currently it's just a bit of a dump, and that's what I wanted. And I think it turned out pretty much exactly like that. I think the use of just these dirty decals really help to achieve that, and a lot of the type of buildings that I'm using are just fast food and rundown motels, and I think that's pretty cool. A decal I'm pretty sure you just saw me use just a moment ago was these white squares of different sizes. I've been placing them around the walls. I've noticed these around the highway walls as well, and these are generally used to cover up graffiti, and I thought that was a cool little touch that it added. I would have really loved to find some sort of decal that was of graffiti that I could have just placed down on these walls, but unfortunately all the graffiti I could find in the workshop were vertical decals rather than ones that I could place down on a flat surface. So if you are someone who is interested in creating something like that, I think that'd be a great addition to the workshop. I think it'd be really awesome as well if we could, I don't know, this has just only come to my mind right now, but it'd be so cool if we had some custom graffiti decals that we could place around Bordertown. You know, maybe something that had some sort of graffiti that was related to a gang that was just specific to Bordertown, or whether there was graffiti that was related to like an asset creator or another YouTuber. That'd be so cool. It'd be really, really fun. If you're interested, get in touch. We've created some custom billboards for Bordertown and Springwood on my Discord before, and you'll see me place the Bordertown ones down a little later in this episode. They really just make this place come alive, and they're just so unique. I love them. And if we had some graffiti, man, that would just be the icing on the cake. I think that'd look pretty cool. So get in touch if you're interested in creating something like that. If you are just interested in creating some of the logos that could be created into decals, then yeah, get in touch. That'd be also pretty cool. And what I'm doing now is I'm detailing all the shops above. I really wanted to get some good detail work around these places. I was really loving the way that these places look. Speaking of some cool custom assets, this building here is Los Geckos. He's created his own, I feel like it's a Mexican restaurant. I could be wrong though, but it just fits in so beautifully around here. I knew exactly where I wanted to place it when he released it, and I've just been holding off putting it down. So you might notice that too. It's an orange building. And I'm pretty much just filling this space with car parks and little gardens. I really didn't want to place down too many gardens. I wanted this whole area to be pretty much just concrete. It's a really tricky thing to work with when you're just working with one type of texture, which is this gray texture, because immediately you just want to fill it with as much as possible, but sometimes you just need to just let it do its thing and just give it a bit of space. So I was trying to restrain myself. I was just trying to decal it a bit and make a couple of different surface differences at least, but trying really hard not to place down too many props at least. I know I'm probably doing a pretty bad job of it. I'm just going to town on props, but something that I did want to really achieve is just continuing that rundown look. Couple of piles of rubbish and some real scratched up surfaces too. And look, you're probably noticing me place down a whole bunch of buildings that I've probably assumed that some buildings are takeaway shops or fast food joints, and they're not. Like this Lovers building, I don't even know what that is. That's not in Australia. It's probably like a completely unrelated building that doesn't fit in this area. Probably is. Let me know if it is, if I've totally missed the mark. A lot of people like to call me out on things that I try to place down. I've said this before, Australia is so different to the US. It's really tricky to actually capture the US, and it's really tricky to just go on my own tangent as well without having to look at like Google Earth or maps or anything like that, because I really just, as soon as I start placing things down, I just assume that's what it looks like, because that's how it might be in Australia, or at least what I imagine the US to look like. But generally I'm pretty far from the mark. And something that I've definitely made a mess of is all the highways. Now, highways in the US and highways in Australia, again, totally different. Not only do we drive on the wrong side of the road, but we're actually on the right side of the road, but I think all the markings and all the signs and everything like that are just totally different. So as much as I go down into Street View and try and check out everything, try to make sure I'm getting everything right, it's still a mess, and it's probably going to continue to be a mess. And I think you're just going to have to either love it or hate it. It's something that I'm probably never going to ever be able to achieve properly. But you know what? In my other series, my Down Under series, I can whip out those episodes so quickly because I just obviously live in Australia. It is surprisingly so much easier to create those episodes because I actually know how everything looks. And I pretty much don't need to look at anything like Google Earth or maps or pictures to get inspiration. I can pretty much just go generally of my own imagination, whereas it's pretty much impossible to do that with this series. But I'm always interested to hear your feedback. You guys are generally really nice to me when it comes to things like this, which I'm always very surprised at. Generally, some people aren't very nice, but most people are really nice with the things that I place down. And the people who aren't, I just laugh because it's kind of funny how triggered some people get. And in the last little part of the time lapse, I'm working on the start of the downtown. This is like the rougher area of the downtown, and in the episode after, we're going to get into the much nicer section of the downtown. So again, just trying to figure out what the skyline's going to look like. I don't exactly know. I do know that the tallest building is not going to stick out like a sore thumb. It's just going to be just a building, and I think I know the type of building that I want to be the main building in Las Palmas, but I'm still sort of figuring things out. But generally this whole area is going to be a mix of pretty much like low commercial and also some office blocks. And we're starting to get into the taller side of buildings, but generally this whole area is still just an area that you're either going to for a particular type of shop, or you're pretty much there for transit. And so I was trying to keep with that sort of a theme. A lot of car parks as well. There's so many car parks in the US. There's heaps of car parks in Australia too, but so many in the US. That's something that I always forget to place down, and they're so boring to place down, but they're so necessary. They just seem to be such a big part about it. So, and particularly in the downtown, like I'm so surprised at how much space is actually taken up by car parks. They're kind of boring and they're kind of weird to look at in the downtown when in city skylines, but it just makes a lot of sense. So this whole area around here is sort of dedicated to car parks. And I've just placed down a couple of more fast food joints. This Starbucks turns out pretty cool. We used to have a whole bunch of Starbucks in Oz, but a lot of them went out of business. I think it wasn't doing too well, even though we love coffee in Australia, but Starbucks didn't really take off that much. But I know it's a massive chain in the US, so I do a few more of these of the Starbucks buildings around this downtown. I think they're probably most popular around the downtown areas, and but this one's sitting on the fringe. And I love this little area, how it turns out. These little gardens, I think, just look really, really cool. They look great just to differentiate a little bit of the car parks as well, just to create a little bit of difference. And this car park that I'm building right now is what I wanted it to look like. Was purely dedicated to this one big office building here, and it was a bit more of a restricted car park, like maybe only the VIPs park around here, and that's it. There's probably like 15 spaces and that's it. So I placed like a really big fence around it, and also some security cameras and things like that. And this plaza that I've placed down, Vanilla Plaza, that came with a Park Life update. I use this at the base of pretty much every single building that I put down in the downtown areas of my cities. It fits in so beautifully. It's a great looking asset. The trees aren't even half bad, so I don't really mind them. And it's got these really cool steps, and it's just such an easy building to place down and forget about it. It's great. I think it works really nicely. But guys, that's pretty much it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I've really, really enjoyed working on this highway system, and it's pretty much done. I will be working on it probably in like a few months or so. It's pretty much done for the time being at least. And next episode, we're going to be working on the downtown area in more detail. And in particular, we're going to be working on a feature that I really love about El Paso's downtown. You have a little bit of a speculate about it. It's going to be so damn cool. I've already built it and it looks sick. But anyway, that's it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. And until next week, have a great one. And I'll see you in the next episode. See you later.